Hello everyone and welcome to another trade recap and forecast. So the hottest news that we have is of course Trump tariffs, China, possibly new drama on the horizon, and of course the biggest movers have been the Nasdaq with the massive sell-off and Bitcoin. So Bitcoin massively sold off last week on Friday. We're gonna discuss this. But first, let me mention some of the most important events that have happened last week so that we know why there is specific movement in the markets. So the first event would be Japan. What is happening in Japan? Well, we had an unexpected winner for the prime minister position, Takaishi, and who was supposed to win was Koizumi. Anytime you have an unexpected event in the markets, usually there is a repricing and there is a trend that happens in the markets. So Koizumi was supposed to win. He was apparently hawkish and in line with the Bank of Japan raising of interest rates, while Takaishi is more dovish and she is not in line with the Bank of Japan. She would rather have lower interest rates. This event meant that, for example, EJ went up, AJ went up, NJ went up. So pretty much last week on Monday, we had a massive explosion in the value of other currencies against the yen. The yen lost a lot of value, right? Because of that unexpected prime minister position. So that was the first big news, and I'm monitoring the Japanese yen. Second big news was, of course, Trump tariffs. If you're closely watching Financial Juice, which is absolutely free, and I highly recommend you guys take a look at Financial Juice every single day. So, first news was calculating increased tariffs on Chinese products. Second news, a couple of hours later, imposing a 100% tariff on China. Okay, so that made the market very, very scared. That is what caused the yen to creep up a bit, the dollar to lose a bit of value, Bitcoin to absolutely melt lower. And this was some insider trading. I'm not sure if you're following it, but from CoffeeZilla, there is a very interesting video on the subject, how there was a trader who executed, I think, 100 million or 200 million short position 1 minute before Trump announced the tariffs. So insider trading, maybe, well, most likely, but very interesting to see. And Bitcoin just crashed massively. So as you can see, it lost kind of 11% of its value. Yeah, pretty big. Nasdaq had a big crash as well. So it didn't follow through today, but I think still this the US needs to wake up. The US market needs to open. This is pre-open, I'm guessing. So we will see what will happen. But also on Sunday, so yesterday, Trump kind of walked back on the news and he said that he is actually good with China, that he is in talks with China. So maybe the tariff won't be implemented. Okay, so that is something that we still need to monitor. It may have been a one-off event with the massive sell-off, and now we're gonna pretty much rebound and continue going to the upside. So I'll do some more analysis on this a bit later. I want to go through the Forex calendar for the last week. So the general story is still the US government shutdown. When the US government is in a shutdown, US data is not coming out. So you have a pretty quiet week, you can say. So the NFP report is still not coming out. US government data may be impacted by the shutdown. Tentative events are subject to delay, revision, or cancellation. So we have to wait until the US government reopens, right? Other than dollar news, we had some interesting news for the New Zealand dollar, where they cut rates by more than expected. So the previous number was 3%, the forecast was 2.75, and the actual number was 2.5. That was a pretty significant reaction as well on let's say the New Zealand dollar, where it lost a lot of value. Okay, so the New Zealand lost a lot of value. And that is the sort of thing that creates trends. So if you're a trader, fundamentals are what moves the markets. And you have to have some sort of an unexpected event that is much different from the forecast, which will spike massive moves, massive volatility. We had the example with Japan and the new prime minister. We had the example with Trump and China tariffs. We have an example here of a central bank cutting interest rates. Okay. And this was also kind of it was not really a sustained move, but overall we did continue going lower. So this was pretty hard to exploit unless you have lightning fast data. Okay. That was interesting. The New Zealand dollar, for kind of painting a picture. I'm short the New Zealand dollar. I would like to sell it. So this is good for me personally. I'm looking for entries. And also we had some CAD news which came in much higher than expected. So the employment change. If you have been following me for a while, if you have been watching my live streams, you would know that I really want to short the CAD. So I think the CAD right now is the biggest fiscal sinner. We can take a look at that using the edge finder. So let's look at first the short-term data for the CAD. Here it is. Only 37.5% of the data is coming out better than expected. That's pretty bad. So the short-term data is looking very, very bearish. The last reports with the employment stuff is good, that is bullish, but most of the other stuff is bearish. So short-term, bearish. Now let's take a look at the long-term. I'm talking about the GDP for the CAD. Not the greatest. We have some negative reports. Okay, the last one looks like it's positive, but a couple of the other ones were pretty negative. The unemployment rate for the CAD is 7.1%. That is still very, very high. This is the main issue. This is the major problem, because it's all about the relative numbers. It's not about how it looks, how Canada looks just by itself. It's about comparing the numbers that are coming out in Canada to other numbers, to other economies in the world. So 7.1% is pretty high, and we're in an uptrend. That's problematic. Inflation is around 2%. See, around 2%. So there is not a lot of room for the Bank of Canada to cut interest rates to stimulate the economy, to stimulate the employment, because they risk raising the inflation above the target. So that whole story of both short-term and long-term data is telling me I want to short the CAD. Currently, I think it is the weakest currency relative to other currencies. And it's all about the relativity, right? So you need to find an economy that is the weakest, that is producing the worst numbers, comparing to other major economies in the world. If you want to get this software, if you want to get the Edge Finder, you can do so by checking the link in the description of this video and using my discount code, which is MARKO. Okay, so you can get a nice discount on the software. If you want trade signals, trade analysis, general interaction, and breakdowns of key fundamental events, both from Nick and from me, you can check out the A1 Discord. The last trade signal I gave was this right here, nice winner. So USD CAD, I will go through the trade, but this was a very nice trade. I went long the dollar, I went short the CAD, I just explained why, and we hit the take profit. I did close my position a bit earlier, so just to be transparent, but this was a very nice setup and a very nice winner. So if you want access to the Edge Finder, you can check it out. If you want access to the A1 Discord and all of the trade signals, you can check that out as well, and make sure to use my discount code, which is MARKO. So let's continue with the video. That's about it in terms of the news that came in unexpected. Okay, so that's about it from what I can see here. Now, for the upcoming week, we have a lot of tentative news connected with the US dollar. I'm not gonna waste too much time going through that news because the US government is still shut down. So as long as the shutdown lasts, we're not gonna get our news. So let's take a look at some other stuff that is happening. We have Fed Chair Powell speaking. I'm not sure if it's gonna be massively important. I would say the only very important event that I can see here is basically for the Aussie, the employment numbers. I'm long on the Aussie. I like the Aussie, so I would like to see some positive numbers. And for the pound, we have some GDP data. And the pound, the UK, I think is in massive trouble. So we will see what will happen. But the UK is another fiscal sinner. So that's what's going on for the upcoming week. Now, let's jump onto the charts. Let's see what is happening on my watch list. So, the first one is the Nasdaq. For the Nasdaq, I'm looking for buy setups. We may be finally getting the pullback I was looking at. Again, if you have been following me for a while, you would know that I was trying to catch a pullback on the Nasdaq for a long time now, but we never seem to get that big pullback. Is this it? Not sure, possibly. Here are the levels I'm looking at. This is the first one. I didn't take an initial position because I want to see some sort of a rejection at that area. But if we approach it and get a rejection, so get some bullish momentum, I'm gonna possibly get in on an initial buy position. And this is the second area, so around 22.9 or let's say 2300. That's the second area where I will attempt to get in on a buy setup. Okay, so far, because Trump kind of walked back on his news, on his stance, that's sort of called the taco trade. Trump always chickens out, okay? That means Trump goes crazy with news, as you can see here, and then he backs down, he changes his opinion, and the last post I have seen from him is basically he said that he's good with China, that they're in talks, and that kind of tells you that maybe this tariff won't be implemented. And that would mean the Nasdaq continues higher without much of a pullback. In that case, I don't have a lot of options. I need to see a pullback, I need to see a discount, I need to get in at a lower level. So I told you which levels I'm looking at. If the price does go into those levels, I will try to buy because I'm still bullish on the US economy. I think relative to other economies, it's still pretty strong. So yes, the NFP is falling. If you look at NFP data, it is falling, but the unemployment rate is staying the same. So the markets are just, the unemployment is looking pretty flat, okay? So the markets are just maybe kind of slowing down a little bit with NFP. We're coming from this massive bull run in the NFP numbers, massively high NFP numbers, and that is not sustainable. Also, you have immigration crackdowns. A lot of people are getting deported. That means a lot less people are working in the United States, right? So all of that workforce is being extracted from the US and put back to, let's say, Mexico or whichever other country they're from. That all has an impact on the markets, but I still think the unemployment rate is the main thing to look at, and it still looks pretty healthy, and the US looks to be doing well. The AI revolution, the AI bubble is still in play. There's still massive spending going on into artificial intelligence, which should inflate prices higher. So I still like buying the Nasdaq. Gold and silver are just exploding higher, so still just massively exploding higher. This uncertainty with Trump, China, tariffs is another reason why gold can go to the upside, okay? And with the dollar weakness that we had, right, with the dollar weakness, gold and silver should go to the upside. So I'm looking at them. I want to buy. I definitely want to get in, but they just seem to be parabolic. They seem to be exploding higher. Zero pullbacks, zero discounts, and that is a problem. I'm not the person to chase all-time highs. It doesn't fit my personal plan to chase all-time highs, so I'm gonna have to stay on the sidelines, and I'm gonna have to wait for a pullback on both assets. Some levels I can tell you right away, let's say here, here. So these are the levels where if we do pull back to, I will start taking buy setups. Again, not massive risk. So I'm not gonna slap on massive risk on these trades, but I'm gonna try to get in some smaller positions. I'm gonna try to get in on some pullbacks. So yeah, I have the same opinion on the NASDAQ, on gold and on silver. They're overextended. I wanna get in, but I don't wanna be the one chasing the highs. I don't wanna be the one buying here and then this happens, right? So I know there was probably a lot of investors that saw the price here and said, well, this looks to be just bullish. Let me buy. We're a bit overextended, but it doesn't matter. And then this happens. Okay. So much better to buy when there's blood in the streets, when there is a discount, when there is a big pullback. That's the game plan. Bitcoin, if you did watch my last trade recap and forecast, or if you're following my daily forecasts in the A1 Discord, again, that's for the paid members, you would know that I was looking for buy setups on Bitcoin. Thankfully, I didn't take them, but what I wanted to see was a break and retest. So fundamentally, I was bullish on Bitcoin. Bitcoin acts as a technology stock. It usually follows the NASDAQ. That's why it heavily sold off on Friday. And I was looking at this level of resistance. I was looking at a break and retest like this, okay? And I wanted to get in. I wanted to get in on a nice buy setup. Fortunately, I was looking for more momentum. So I was looking for another big daily candle. And then what happened? We just sold off. We're back in the range. We're stuck in a range. We're super flat, as you can see here. So super flat. And I'm removing Bitcoin from the watch list. It no longer looks good to buy. So that one is out. I'm just being patient. Okay. If we can approach that resistance level again and break it with force, then I'll consider getting in. Of course, fundamentals need to be bullish, so the technicals need to be in line with the fundamentals, but if they are, I will consider a position. GBPUSD is a currency pair that I was looking at last week. So it was Thursday, and we started to break out from the flat range. I have been very bearish on the pound and bullish on the dollar for quite some time now. If we look at the Edge Finder, if we look at the short-term news or reports, we can see the dollar is maybe a bit bullish, while the pound is kind of neutral. But long-term, the pound is having a lot of trouble, okay? So you can look at the GDP for the pound. Kind of all over the place, negative on some days or on some reports. Unemployment rate for the GBP is 4.7, possibly going a bit higher. And now the worst thing is inflation. So inflation is pretty high, 3.8%. That is really high. So that's a problem. That's sort of called a stagflation scenario in the UK. Stagflation is bearish for the pound. So I was looking to sell this. Of course, I was looking for a breakout first out of the range. We started to see that, but then we had the news from Trump, and that sort of negated my whole trade idea because it made the dollar weak. It made the dollar lose value, right? So we did start to break out of the range, but then we went back into it, and now I'm just expecting for us to continue in the range, unfortunately. So not a lot of opportunities right now. Because of that, I will remove GBP/USD from the watch list. It no longer looks interesting. If we can continue lower, I will place an alert. So if we can continue lower, I'll put it back on the watch list. Then I'll be actively looking for sell setups. But as far as the current price goes, I don't like it. I don't want to get stuck in this range. I don't want to sell here and then just be stuck in a range and have to basically stay in this position for a long time. I think the swaps are positive, so we can check the swaps. Swaps are very important when trading currencies. Okay, so make sure to always check the swaps. Yeah, so positive swaps if I sell, but not a lot. The interest rate divergence is quite small. It's not like you're looking at USD/JPY and you're looking to buy USD/JPY where you get paid massive swaps because the interest rate divergence is massive. So GBP/USD, not for me right now. Aussie CAD, I got taken out. This was a trade in the A1 Discord. At this point, we were looking pretty good. I trailed my stop loss. So as the price kept moving higher, I put my stop loss below this swing low right here and somewhere around break even, basically. I moved the stop to break even and then we sold off heavily, okay? So what happened? Well, Aussie is very connected to China. Australia does a lot of business with China. So if there is any trouble with China, Australia will suffer, okay? So with the news from Trump, with crazy tariffs, the Aussie heavily sold off, right? Massive red candle. I'm now out of this trade, unfortunately. It is what it is. I'll possibly consider a re-entry. I'll possibly look for another entry. If we can maybe go up a bit more, be above the 20 MA, I will try to get back in. So happy with the trade. It was around break even, not really a win, not really a loss, but I still think fundamentals are there. I'm still bullish on the Aussie. I'm still very bearish on the CAD. Let me check the short term. So let's see. For the Aussie, yeah, the most recent data doesn't look great, but overall data, like trends of data, long-term data looks much better. Looks definitely much better than the CAD, okay? So I will consider possibly a re-entry. USD CAD is a trade that I closed last week. So if you're in the A1 Discord, this was a trade signal and ended up being a nice winner. I closed it for around 1 hour, but if you held it to the initial take profit, this would have been like a 1.27 to 1 winner. I closed it prematurely around this level because I started to see the price slow down a bit. I had a lot of CAD short exposure. I wanted to reduce that exposure a bit. I wanted to basically get out of this position. So I closed it too early, but it is what it is. I'm still happy with the trade. I'm very happy with the trade. I'm possibly looking for a re-entry. So I'm possibly looking to get back in this one. If we can get back to the 20 MA, get a bit of a pullback, and if the fundamentals are still in line, okay? The last employment report from Canada was pretty good, so that is not really a good sign to get in this trade, but I will reevaluate, and of course, if you're in the A1 Discord, you will get notified about any new potential entries. So that's it, and the trade that I'm still in is EuroCAD. So EuroCAD is another bet on CAD short, on selling the CAD that I have. I like the euro. I think the euro is a pretty strong currency. Let me check just the short-term news. I know long-term news looks pretty healthy. Short-term though is pretty bad. So the latest numbers have been pretty bad, which kind of is being reflected in the price with the bit of a slowdown, bit of a sell-off. I still like it though. I still like the euro. I still don't like the CAD, so I will keep holding this position. It's not massive risk, so I don't care if it goes to the stop loss. My stop loss is also pretty big on this trade. We may just be approaching this lower trend line, right? So we have that trend line, and we may just be sort of kind of bouncing off that level of support. So that's currently the only live trade that I have. The most interesting thing this week for me personally is gonna be the Nasdaq. So the Nasdaq does look the most interesting because it may be starting that massive or kind of bigger pullback that I was looking for, so that I can get my discount, so that I can get in on an initial buy position. That is what I'm looking at. That is what I'm considering. Gold and silver are just flying higher without any concern. And Aussie CAD, USD CAD I'm out, Aussie CAD I'm out, Euro CAD I'm holding. So any new trade ideas that I develop or find will of course be in my daily forecasts. I don't have any concrete entries that I'm waiting for right now. So I'm waiting for a bit more development on this whole tariff thing, because we had, as I mentioned, Trump imposing a 100% tariff on China. And then you had a tweet on Sunday saying that no, everything is good with China. And he left it a bit uncertain. It's not certain if he will impose the tariff or if he will never impose this tariff. So I want to get some more clarity on that. And then I can maybe look at some currency pairs and some indices. GBP/USD, I did mention it, but that is also gonna be interesting to see if we can commit. So if we can actually continue going lower, I'm actually gonna put this one back on the watch list if I'm being honest. I wanna keep an eye out what is happening to GBP/USD. So let's put this one back and we will see what will happen if we can actually commit and continue. So that's about it. Have a great trading week. So watch out for the news. There's not a lot of it. I don't think we're gonna get the US government reopening this week. So as far as the US dollar news goes, I don't think we'll get much. Rest of the news, we have the Aussie and we have the GBP. Okay, yeah, GBP. So that's about it. Thank you. See you in the next video.
Did you know we do a live trading show Monday through Friday with guests from all over the world? To get notified when we go live, click the bell button next to the subscribe button or check in at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We have helpful, free content in the description below and on our website, a1trading.com. Thanks for watching today's video, and we'll see you tomorrow.